Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, we're going to be talking about the debut album from Migos, titled Young Rich Nation. Oh, I bet there are some of you who are probably wondering why the hell I'm covering this. Because given the hip-hop that I'm known to like, this probably seems like I'm going straight through the bottom of the barrel, right to the dregs seeping into the ground. And I can already see some of the comments, dude, you don't like ignorant hip-hop. Why the hell are you going after Migos of all people? Why are you reviewing them? Well, let me clear up a few things first, a few misconceptions. For one, I honestly don't have that much of a problem with hip-hop being shallow, accessible, and fun. Provided, of course, the beats are banging, the hooks are solid, the flows are cohesive, the performers at least have some charisma, and there's at least a modicum of wit behind the bars. They can be shallow, sure, in terms of their subject matter, but there needs to be something there. And while I'd argue there's enough hard-hitting hip-hop that's both smart and anthemic and has good hooks, I can only point at Doomtree so many times, people. I get that party music doesn't have to be all that lyrical if they can make up for it elsewhere. All that being said, to say that I had trepidation approaching this album would be understating it. Migos broke with the viral track Versace in 2013, a piece of repetitive brand name porn where I kept feeling that the production was shutting off every few seconds. It was weird. But what Migos were able to do over the next several mixtapes was establish a distinctive staccato triplet flow that quickly became very influential and flooded hip-hop. And I'll admit I wasn't really a fan of it. Sure, it was distinctive and catchy, but it often felt very jumpy to me and lacked a decent groove. Well, beyond that, what else can you say about Migos? Everything I heard about them was shallow, hedonistic luxury porn of the basest variety, to the point where I've seen YouTube comment sections on their videos filled with admissions like, yeah, this kind of sucks and the lyrics are garbage, but I still like it anyway, it's fun, right? So this review is more of an experiment for me. I wanted to see if there's actually anything more beneath Migos' idiosyncratic style, figure out why people like them. So I took a very deep breath and dug into their major label debut album off of Atlantic, Young Rich Nation. What'd I find? Well, simultaneously more and less than I expected. I went into this album expecting some ignorant, fun, heavy party bangers, and I only felt like it got maybe half of that. I'm not sure if it's because this album feels long because of the repeated subject matter. It feels a little bit safe thanks to them signing to a major label, but this record does not really have the energy or punch I was hoping to find, even despite the group's best efforts. Maybe it's a sign that once you get past the triplet flow and the trap beats, the group doesn't really have that much more to offer. Oh, kind of hard to tell, but it ultimately means I found myself a fair bit underwhelmed by this release, which kind of surprised me. I was expecting to hate this, and being a little bit bored and ambivalent wasn't what I was expecting. So let's start with the element I think works the best, and that's Migos themselves. I'll give them this. When they can stick with their triplet flow, they can ride these beats decently well, with Takeoff probably sounding the least comfortable on them, and yet bizarrely the most technically proficient and interesting MC on this album. He at least has a more distinctive voice, and he can switch up his flows and he can drop into double time, which is more like I say for Quavo's half auto-tuned croon and Offset falling somewhere in the middle and generally being the least interesting of the three. I'll say this, a combination of the three at least gives the album some unique personality, and they at least bring energy. Nowhere as much as the crunk party jams that I liked in the mid-2000s that I grew up with, but basically recycled similar subject matter, but we'll get to that. And Migos does outshine both their guest stars too, with Chris Brown's nasal, heavily auto-tuned hook on Just for a Night making the track significantly more obnoxious than it should be, and Young Thug delivering a surprisingly uninteresting verse on Cocaine. I expected him to deliver at least a little bit more eccentricity here. What's more alarming is that both these tracks feel like rejects from Chris Brown and Young Thug albums instead of giving Migos some distinctive instrumental personality of their own. And the fact that they both suck is indicative that Migos might be best on their own material. But then again, when you look at these beats and production, I struggle to find a lot that you can really enjoy or bang to. It's odd. You expect with a step towards the mainstream with a major label push behind them would lead to more hook-driven tracks, but Migos' knack for solid earworms doesn't really materialize here. I'm laying a lot of the blame on the producers, not the group. For the most part, it's an issue of mix balance. The blubbery low-end bass beats are often cranked up so high in the mix that it suffocates any of the damp, glossy synths or jittery pianos that Migos tries to bring in for a melody. It doesn't help matters, almost the strings and the horns sound so fake and chintzy, and none of the hi-hats hit particularly strongly, that I'm left feeling distinctly underwhelmed by the production as a whole, especially from a major label debut. I mean, come on, did this album have a budget beyond their mixtapes? The real disappointments maybe come from Zaytoven, who managed to actually significantly elevate Future's slurred brand of hip-hop on his last album, Dirty Sprite 2, and yet delivers some very messy work here, especially in the otherwise not bad What a Feeling. That said, are there instrumental moments and hooks that I actually kind of like? Yeah, sure, a few. I like the piano work on Memoirs, the hooks on Spray the Champagne and Pipe hype it up were pretty infectious, and the synth tones on Playa Playa were actually pretty decent. But beyond that, the atonal scratchy mess of gangster rap, the complete lack of funk vibes on trap funk, and the overall lack of depth in the mixes on this entire album leaves a lot of the production feeling very cheap and not nearly hard-hitting enough to redeem it. Again, this is a major label debut, and this is the best production they get? So okay, what about these lyrics? Alright, you know this is functionally pointless, right? This is one of the other issues with this album. Sure, conceptually some of these songs might be talking about different things, but when you break it down to individual bars, so much of this album is just retreading brand names, flexing, and screwing your bitch, with just a hint of lean addiction courtesy of Takeoff. And while I'll give points to Migos for triumphantly pointing out that really most of the rap game is jumping on their flows that they started first, they rarely do enough with those flows in terms of punchlines or storytelling for me to really care all that much. And what makes the claims on gangster rap that they're bringing back the subgenre so asinine to me? Well, it's because at least that material tried for rough-edged stories or a sense of menace, which this record cannot pull off, even on the Police Escape anthem, Highway 65. And it doesn't help matters that while Takeoff easily gets some of the best punchlines, he also tends to make the corniest references. I mean, seriously, the Rugrats and Thundercats lines on Trap Funk, the Gilligan's Island reference on Playa Playa, the time where he's talking about his audience remember his first break-in on Memoirs, where in the very next line, he mentioned how there was nobody around him. So how could we remember exactly? It's those breaks in the logic that show up a distressing amount of laziness in the writing, and they're all over this album. Take the lead-off single One Time, how they're only gonna do it all one time. Sorry guys, it didn't work when Justin Bieber did this in 2009, it's not working for you either. Or take Just for Tonight, where Quavo says that this girl is the bomb, so he's gonna call her Saddam. You know, the entire reason behind the war in Iraq was such a stain on US history is that Saddam Hussein didn't have the bomb or any weapons of mass destruction. You get that, right? Or take Street Sacrifice, where the hook really doesn't make much sense the more you think about it, and Offset saying that grandma was a sacrifice, and Quavo seriously referencing the Complex article saying that Migos was better than the Beatles, which I don't think he realized that was a joke. And that's the frustrating thing about this album. It only manages to work at all when you don't remotely take it seriously, and he is traded as lightweight party bangers, where we get maybe 3 if I'm being generous. I'm not denying that Migos has some flows, but eventually you need to say something and have some memorable lines to get me to care. And the more this album repeats itself, the less I do care. Coupled with the fact that the beats and the production are rarely all that interesting or all that special, I'm left with an album that feels a fair bit shorter than their mixtapes that still feels stretched in terms of its content. And yet at the end of the day, if you put it on the right party, I can see it going hard in the right area, and there are some moments that are kind of fun, which elevates it to a very, very light 5 out of 10. As for recommending it, look, whether you're a fan of Migos or you hate their guts or just kind of indifferent to the whole affair, I can say this about Young Rich Nation: it will not change your mind. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yeah, I have no idea why I covered this anyway, but I got a couple of requests for it, and I figured why the hell not? I wrote the review anyway. Yeah, busy couple of weeks coming up ahead with Luke Bryan and Dr. Dre and Chelsea Wolfe and Frank Turner. Yeah, I got a lot of stuff on my plate right now. But if there's anything else you want me to review or any other albums coming out that you want me to cover, I'm all ears. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.